Have you ever wondered why the presence of a woman with depth unsettles so many men? It is not her beauty, nor her charm, but something far more dangerous to the fragile architecture of their ego. Depth is a mirror, and when a woman carries it in her gaze, she does not simply reflect admiration, she exposes. The man who peers into her soul sees not only her truth but his own shadow staring back at him. And it is this confrontation, sudden and unrelenting, that he fears more than rejection, more than silence, more than loss. A deep woman moves differently in the world. She is not intoxicated by surface-level games, nor swayed by empty promises whispered in the dark. She does not measure her worth by the attention of a man, because her sense of self has been carved by storms, by solitude, by the furnace of inner transformation. She has tasted her own despair and chosen not to drown. Such a woman does not beg to be seen. She already sees herself. And in a society that thrives on distraction and shallow roles, her very existence becomes an act of quiet rebellion. Carl Jung once wrote that what we most resist in others is often what we deny in ourselves. When a man recoils from a deep woman, it is rarely because of who she is, but because of what she awakens in him. Her presence whispers of unresolved wounds, unexamined fears, the false masks he has worn for too long. Her depth does not flatter his ego, it dismantles it. She becomes the catalyst for an encounter he has avoided his whole life, the confrontation with his own unconscious. Depth unsettles because it demands reciprocity. The shallow man thrives in performance, boasting his strength, rehearsing his charm, clinging to external symbols of power. Yet before the deep woman, these props collapse. She does not bow to them. She does not mistake volume for confidence, nor arrogance for leadership. Instead, she peers into the silence beneath his gestures, and in that silence he feels exposed, naked, as though the persona he has polished with such care has been stripped away in an instant. This is why many men retreat, mock, or dismiss the deep woman. It is easier to call her too much, too complicated, or too intense than to admit the truth. She requires a man who has faced his own abyss. And how many dare? Jung described individuation as the lifelong process of integrating the shadow, of reconciling the hidden aspects of the psyche with the mask presented to the world. A deep woman lives this process instinctively. She carries within her the union of light and darkness, tenderness and fire. To stand beside her, a man must do the same, and for many, this demand is unbearable. You have seen this dance before. Perhaps you have lived it. A man pursues you with fervor, intoxicated by the mystery of your presence. But as soon as he realizes your soul cannot be conquered like a prize, his passion turns cold. His admiration transforms into distance. He wanted the image of depth, without the responsibility of meeting it. And so he withdraws, leaving you questioning what fault was yours, when in truth it was his own unpreparedness. The Stoics knew this pattern well. Seneca wrote that true strength lies not in conquest, but in mastery of the self. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that the enemy is not the other, but the passions and illusions within. Men who fear deep women are men who have not yet learned this discipline. They mistake external achievement for inner worth, applause for love, control for intimacy. When faced with a woman who cannot be fooled, they collapse because she embodies the truth they have denied. Nothing external can hide an unexamined soul. And so, depth becomes a kind of sacred fire. For the man who is unready, it burns. For the man who is willing, it illuminates. But the choice is never yours to make for him. The deep woman does not shrink to ease his discomfort. She does not dim her flame to soothe his fear. She allows his reaction to reveal who he truly is. In this way, she becomes both the test and the teacher, even in silence. This is the hidden reason men fear deep women. She does not need them to complete her, but she does require them to be complete themselves. And the terror of facing one's own incompleteness is a weight many cannot bear. Depth, after all, is not a game. It is a call to transformation, and only those who dare to answer it will ever know its power. Depth in a woman does not announce itself with noise. It is not loud, nor does it demand the spotlight. It seeps into the atmosphere like incense, subtle yet undeniable, filling every space it touches. Men sense it instinctively, often before they can articulate why they feel unsettled. Her presence shifts the rhythm of the room, slowing it, thickening it, forcing others to feel what they have long suppressed. And for the man who has built his identity upon avoidance, this is intolerable. In the realm of archetypes, the deep woman embodies both the lover and the sage. She holds the sensuality of presence and the wisdom of stillness. She does not seduce with shallow flattery, but with the raw authenticity of her being. Jung would have said she carries the anima fully awakened within herself, the feminine principle not as decoration, but as force. Men fear this because it renders their projections useless. They cannot cast upon her their fantasies of helpless damsel or compliant muse. She is not there to fulfill a script. She is there to embody her own narrative. And when a man loses the power to project, he also loses the illusion of control. This is why he grows uneasy, even defensive. For projection is the unconscious attempt to bind another to one's unresolved longing. When it fails, the void is revealed. He realizes that to stand in her presence he must offer himself without masks, and few have practiced such nakedness. Vulnerability feels like exposure, but to the deep woman, it is the only true currency. Without it, there is nothing but shadows pretending to dance. Some men will call her intimidating, as though her strength were an affront. Yet intimidation is not the truth. It is the echo of his own fragility. Her gaze does not wound, it simply sees. And what it sees is not always flattering. The boy who still hides in the man, the wounds left unhealed, the pride that masks fear. To encounter her is to encounter the mirror of one's unfinished work. No wonder he would rather retreat to safer ground, where admiration costs him nothing and affection does not require transformation. But you who carry such depth, must remember this. His retreat does not diminish your power, it reveals it. The silence of his absence speaks of the weight of your presence. Do not let his fear rewrite the truth of your essence. Your intensity is not too much. It is precisely what separates the authentic from the counterfeit, the courageous from the cowardly. Consider how Jung described the shadow. The parts of the self banished into darkness because the ego could not bear to see them. The deep woman calls these shadows out of exile, not only within herself but within those who come near her. She does not accept half-truths, and she refuses to engage in games that numb the soul. This is not cruelty, though it may feel cruel to the unprepared. It is the natural demand of someone who has faced her own depths and refuses to return to shallowness. Stoic philosophy echoes this wisdom. Epictetus taught that freedom comes not from bending reality to our will, but from aligning ourselves with truth. The deep woman lives by this law. She will not distort herself to make others comfortable, because she knows the cost of such betrayal. To deny her depth would be to deny the very essence of her being. And so she walks, steady, unshaken, letting those who fear her fall away, while those who are willing to rise will remain. Men fear deep women because she reminds them of impermanence. She cannot be captured like a possession, nor chained by shallow promises. Her love, when given, is vast, but it is never needy, and this terrifies the ego accustomed to being the center of a woman's universe. She does not orbit around him. She invites him to orbit alongside her as equals. To the insecure, this feels like dethronement. To the secure, it feels like liberation. You must understand, The fear you witness is not about you being unlovable, but about you being uncontainable. Men fear deep women not because of any flaw, but because of their refusal to fit into smallness. It is a primal fear, the fear of the ocean by one who has only ever known the safety of shallow shores. To love a deep woman is to dive, to risk, to surrender to currents that cannot be controlled. And for many, that surrender feels like death. Yet it is not death, but transformation. For in the arms of a deep woman, a man can finally meet himself. The question is never whether she is too much, but whether he is willing enough. The deep woman unsettles men not simply because of what she reveals, but because of what she refuses to accept. She will not participate in illusions. She will not nod along to half-truths or smile at empty promises. Her silence becomes sharper than any blade, for it cuts through falsehood with precision. And in that silence, men feel their own hollowness echo back at them. They mistake her refusal to play games as rejection, when in truth, it is an invitation to rise. In the archetypal language of Jung, she is the embodiment of the great mother and the wise woman, not in their nurturing or mystical extremes, but in their balance of destruction and creation. She gives life to authenticity and kills pretenses without hesitation. To stand before her is to feel both comfort and terror. Comfort because she sees the soul without judgment, terror because she demands the same in return. Many men crave women they can rescue, mold, or dominate, because such roles affirm their ego. But the deep woman asks for none of this. She does not seek rescue, for she has already saved herself. She does not require molding, for she has shattered and remade herself countless times. She does not invite domination, for her sovereignty is not negotiable. What remains, then, is the raw and uncomfortable task of partnership, equality in vulnerability, honesty, and growth. And this is precisely where fear arises. Imagine the weight of such a demand, to show one's wounds instead of one's trophies, to admit weakness instead of posturing strength, to abandon control and choose trust. To most men, raised in cultures where vulnerability is mocked and feelings are shackled, this is uncharted territory. They have been taught to conquer, not to surrender. And so, when they meet a woman who will not bow to conquest, they call her too difficult. But what they truly mean is, she asks for the man I am too afraid to become. For the deep woman, this dance is agonizing to watch. Time and again, she sees potential in men who cannot bear their own reflection. She feels the possibility of greatness collapse under the weight of fear. She watches them choose comfort over transformation, distraction over intimacy, pride over love. And yet, she does not collapse with them. Her path continues, for her loyalty is not to their avoidance but to her own soul. You too must walk this path. Do not mistake his withdrawal for your failure. Do not shrink to meet his comfort zone. For, to do so would be to abandon the very gift that sets you apart. Your depth is not a punishment. It is a filter. It ensures that only those strong enough to embrace it will remain. Those who scatter in fear do not belong beside you, and their absence is protection disguised as loss. The Stoics spoke of this same principle in another tongue. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The men who fear you are not obstacles to your worth. They are markers of your power. Their fear does not diminish your depth. It amplifies it, for it proves that what you carry is rare, potent, and undeniable. Jung himself insisted that no union between man and woman could be complete without the recognition of both anima and animus, the feminine within the man, the masculine within the woman. The deep woman has integrated both. She is tender yet strong, intuitive yet rational, vulnerable yet unyielding. To be with her requires a man who has begun the same integration. Without it, he will always flinch at her strength, mistaking it for threat rather than invitation. This is why shallow love cannot hold her. It crumbles at the first demand for honesty. It panics at the first moment of silence where truth lingers. But she does not weep long over these fractures. She knows that true connection cannot be forced, and she honors herself too deeply to beg for crumbs. Her love is a feast, but it is not served to those who lack the courage to sit at the table. So remember this: his fear is not your burden. It is his teacher. Whether he heeds it or not is not your concern. You are not here to convince, to soften, to dim. You are here to embody. And the man who is ready will not flee. He will not call you too much. He will not shrink from the storm in your eyes. He will recognize that the storm is also the path to his own rebirth. The hidden fear men hold toward deep women is, at its core, the fear of annihilation, not of the body, but of the false self. When a man encounters a woman who cannot be deceived, who sees beyond his practiced mask, the ego trembles. It whispers to him that if he stays, he will lose the image he has carefully built, the persona he hides behind to feel safe in a world that demands appearances. To be loved by her would mean to be dismantled, stripped bare, and forced into authenticity. And for many, that feels like death. Yet Jung understood that this very death is necessary. The dissolution of the false self is the birth of individuation, the integration of the fragmented psyche into something whole. A deep woman, whether she intends it or not, becomes a midwife to this process. Her love is not the soft lull of flattery. It is the raw mirror that reveals what is unfinished. Her intimacy is not a narcotic escape, but a sacred confrontation. And so the man who fears her is not truly afraid of her at all. He is afraid of himself, of the parts of him that he has buried so deep he no longer recognizes them. For you, the deep woman, this pattern repeats like an ancient myth. Time and again, you feel the magnetic pull of a man drawn to your fire. At first, he marvels at your wisdom, your intensity, your refusal to conform. He calls you rare, intoxicating, unlike anyone he has ever known. But soon, the intoxication shifts to unease. He realizes that your approval cannot be bought with superficial gestures, that your love cannot be earned by charm alone. And when he discovers that you require truth rather than performance, he falters. He vanishes into excuses, distractions, or silence. He leaves not because you are too much, but because he is not yet enough for what you awaken in him. The Stoics taught that fear is always an error of judgment. Epictetus wrote that we suffer not from events themselves, but from our interpretation of them. The fear men project onto deep women is this very error. They interpret her depth as danger, when in truth it is liberation. They see her wisdom as a threat to their dominance, when in truth it is an invitation to grow beyond the fragile walls of their ego. But not every man will understand this. Many will run, clinging to the safety of shallow waters, unwilling to risk drowning in the ocean of her soul. And yet, that ocean is not meant for the faint-hearted. It is meant for the man who has faced storms of his own, who no longer seeks shelter in illusions. When such a man arrives, he will not fear her silence, for he has learned to listen to his own. He will not retreat from her intensity, for he has embraced the fire within himself. He will not call her too much because he understands that her magnitude is not a burden, but a mirror of his own. Until then, she waits not in passivity, but in sovereignty. She does not waste her depth convincing shallow souls to dive. She does not dilute her essence for the comfort of those who cannot handle it. Instead, she lives fully, fiercely, refusing to apologize for the gravity of her being. And in doing so, she becomes both challenge and beacon, the flame that either scorches the unready or guides the worthy home. Do not forget this truth. The fear of men is not a verdict on your worth. It is a measure of their readiness. A deep woman will never be universally adored, because she was never meant to be. She is not a fantasy projected by collective desire. She is a force, an initiation, a threshold. To cross it is to change forever. And that, more than anything, is what men fear. For change requires sacrifice, and sacrifice requires courage. But you, who carry such depth, must hold your head high in the face of retreat. His departure is not rejection, it is confession. It is the admission that he is not yet ready to meet you where you are. And though it may sting, it is also liberation. For it clears the path for one who is ready, one who does not tremble before your fire but longs to share it, not to extinguish it. The hidden reason. Men fear. Deep women is the same reason prophets were feared, why truth-tellers were silenced, why visionaries were exiled. Depth reveals, and what it reveals cannot be unseen. What men truly fear when faced with a deep woman is not her words, not her silence, not even her expectations. It is the mirror she becomes. In her presence, the masks he has worn for years begin to crack. The roles he rehearsed, conqueror, provider, savior, fall flat against her unwavering gaze. She is not moved by performance, because she is not searching for illusion. She seeks essence, and essence cannot be faked. This is the moment he realizes that to stand beside her, he must abandon the version of himself he shows the world. And the terror of losing that false identity becomes stronger than his desire for her. Jung observed that the soul cannot awaken without the death of the persona, the carefully crafted mask built to survive society's demands. The deep woman does not allow this mask to remain intact. Her energy, her depth, her refusal to settle, all work together as a relentless summons to authenticity. To love her is to submit to a kind of alchemy, the burning away of what is false so that the gold of the true self may emerge. And though this is the highest form of love, it is also the most frightening, because it strips away everything familiar. She carries a storm within her, but it is not chaos. It is the storm that clears, that purifies, that prepares the ground for something new. A man unprepared for such transformation will call her destructive. But destruction is only half the truth. She destroys illusions, yes, but only so that something real may take their place. In this way, she is both fire and soil, the force that consumes and the ground from which rebirth begins. Many men cannot bear this. They prefer women who echo their illusions, who feed their fragile sense of control. But you, as a deep woman, cannot play this role without suffocating your soul. You have seen too much of yourself to live as anyone's fantasy. You have walked through the valley of your own shadow, and you know what it costs to betray your truth. So when you meet a man who trembles before your depth, you understand. It is not your task to carry him into the fire. He must choose it himself. This choice is the dividing line. Some will run, some will attack, some will vanish into silence. Others, though rare, will stay. They will not come to conquer, but to learn. They will not shrink from your intensity, because they have made peace with their own. And in that union, depth meets depth, shadow meets shadow, and love becomes something more than desire. It becomes transformation. The Stoics knew this paradox well. Marcus Aurelius wrote that what harms the hive harms the bee, and what harms the bee harms the hive. A shallow bond harms both souls because it traps them in pretense, but a deep bond, though difficult, liberates both because it demands truth. When a man faces the terror of a deep woman and chooses to stay, he begins to free himself from the prison of his ego. Her presence does not diminish him. It expands him if he allows it. And you who carry such depth, must never beg for that expansion on his behalf. You are not here to teach him what only suffering can teach. You are not here to shrink so that he may feel tall. You are here to stand, radiant and unyielding, as proof that true love is possible only when both have embraced the fullness of their being. If he fears you, let him. If he leaves, let him. His departure is the gate through which the worthy arrive. The hidden reason men fear deep women is that she demands they grow. She does not demand it with words nor ultimatums, but with the sheer weight of her authenticity. Her presence alone exposes the gap between who they are and who they could become. For some, this is unbearable. For others, it is irresistible. And so, in the end, the deep woman does not lose. She filters. She sheds what cannot stand beside her. She makes space for the rare soul who sees her not as a threat, but as a gift. And when such a union happens, it is not shallow attraction nor fleeting desire. It is two beings meeting without masks, without fear, without illusion. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.